Hello, my name is Elise Schaefer. I'm the editor of Feed and Grain magazine and the moderator of today's webinar, How to Do More with Less at Your Grain Facility. I'm here with our speakers, Steve Day, Head of Product for Facility and Operations at Greenstone Systems, and Mike Terning, Head of Product for Retail and Grain Origination at Greenstone Systems. Before we get started, I want to mention that Steve and Mike will have time to answer questions at the end of their presentation. You can submit questions at any time by hovering at the bottom of your Zoom window, and a panel should pop up. You'll see a chat window. Just click on that and enter your questions into the text window there. I will save those until the end and then turn them over to Steve and Mike. We're also recording today's webinar, and we'll be emailing you a link to that shortly, or you can view it at our webinar archive page at live.feedandgrain.com. So once again, I want to thank you for spending part of your very busy day with us here at Feed and Grain to learn about ways to maximize your time with COVID-19. I'm sure by now a lot of you have figured out ways to be efficiently productive throughout the pandemic, but there's always more to learn, and so that's why we're here today. Really quickly, before I turn it over to our presenters, I do have a survey that I'd like to share with everyone. Okay, looks like over 75% of you have voted. So I'd like to share the results here. It looks like we've got merchandising and sales as our number one answer, followed by operations. So Mike and Steve, you've got plenty of great information for those folks. And now I will turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elise. Steve and I are excited to spend a little time with our audience today. And we've put out a little agenda here. So we plan on covering three things. The first thing is exploring how technology tools operate and can operate with your business, help your business operate with the same amount of volume, with the same amount of staff, or more volume with the same staff would be the goal. And secondly, we're going to explore tools for stakeholders at the platform scale, in the office, and at remote sites. And then we're going to explore how to harness some of those capabilities with platform scale automation, dispatch tools, commodity accounting elements, as well as relationship management. So it's it'll be back and forth with Steve and myself, about 10 minutes each. So we'll get started here. So the first thing we've depicted here is how to connect some of the systems that you're perhaps already using within your organization. So in the middle here, you'll see we have a platform scale system, and then we have peripheral systems around the platform. So we're going to draw a few lines here just to show you how some of these things connect. Maybe they're already connected in your organization, or maybe you desire to do that. So with the commodity accounting system, there are ways in which you can share contracts, get electronic signatures, share tickets, settlements, invoices, statements, prepays, orders, things like that with a grower-facing mobile application or portal where the producer can go in and sign contracts and do their own proof of yield reports and look at their tickets by farm and field and their contract balances. Also from that system, then, once the grower does sign the contract, it can flow back into the commodity accounting system. As we go down below the commodity accounting system here, we see contracts flowing into what's called a transportation management system or a dispatch system. And sharing contracts with such a system helps create efficiencies. Also sharing destination weights and grades from the dispatch system up to the commodity accounting system creates efficiencies there. And then there are methods where you can share information from your commodity accounting system with platform scale. So when you're updating customer information, farms, fields, discount tables, contracts, origin and destination sites, that can flow into your scale automation system. And then back from the scale automation system up to the commodity accounting system where you share tickets and push those in, and shippers and freight rates, contract applications, and the like. And also with the platform scale, there's capabilities to share load status, destination weights, and grades with the dispatch system as well, along with pushing the dispatch load numbers up to the platform scales. And Steve will get into this in a little while as to how that can help you. Then off to the right, we listed here bin management system. There are various binning systems out there where tickets can flow from the scale into the binning system to track weights, grades, quantities, all those grade factors, and then the intended bin that the load is supposed to go into. And then again, if there's a change, often the binning system can share that back through the channel to the platform scale and onto the commodity accounting system if necessary. So that's a kind of a picture of kind of the vision of how value can be created from not only just the scale, but also to stakeholders who use the commodity accounting system, to dispatchers, to those who are managing the facility with and need that information from the bin management system, and then ultimately to the grower. So one of the things that we have seen work quite well is streamlining laborious paper-driven processes. And one of those processes is contracting. So there are capabilities in the market today where you can allow your merchandisers and originators to capture contracts and with counterparties from any device. Could be a mobile device or a browser, basically from anywhere. There are also capabilities where growers can enter offers into various systems to capture those offers and feed those into an automated offer management system. And then once the offer hits and is filled, hedges can be automated as well with hedge management automation systems. As I mentioned earlier too, the counterparty signatures can be captured electronically through applications today, and then the contracts can be emailed to the counterparty to get the signature. And then those can feed right into the commodity accounting system, as well as to document management systems that your company may use. So if you think about the alternative, the paper method is pretty laborious, where you enter the things in and then maybe on a piece of paper first, key them into the system, print them out, put them in envelopes, mail them, wait for the farmer to send them back to get a physical signature, only to then have to go into the system saying that, you know what, we've captured the signature, the status is signed. So those are the type of processes and friction points to look for in your organization as you seek to do more with less. Now I'm going to turn it over to Steve, and he's going to talk about the scale ticket.
Thanks, Mike. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Want to start with a depiction here, similar to what Mike started with kind of information in the middle and what we can do with that information. I have basically 4 slides that I want to cover today, and at a very high level. And again, as Mike mentioned, you may be doing some of these things today. You may be doing all of these things. Hopefully we come across an item that you haven't thought about or that you're not currently doing, and you can get some benefit from that. So I want to start with the scale ticket, and just a very basic scale ticket. Everybody's familiar with it. But I think sometimes it gets overlooked in what key information we have on this ticket and how we could potentially or should be transmitting this information into other systems. So first, very standard. We need to get this in the top left-hand corner. We need to get this ticket into the commodity accounting business system. So, that's 101, that's the basics. But even there's something to think about, and that is, are we getting it there quick enough? So, and you'll see in a minute why the speed matters, because there's downstream systems that this thing is feeding, and we don't want to wait all day for this information to come in and then start feeding downstream systems, which are meant to be more near real time in today's world. So, just get it into the business system as soon as we can. If we're not sure if we're doing that today, that's something to look at, because there could that could be one of the biggest areas of gain in your company. So as we look at the ticket in the top right, we see that we're going off into a binning system. And if we look back at that ticket around the middle, we see what? A commodity, and we see grade factors. So it'd be very valuable for a binning system to have this information. And again, we can feed this information at the time that you can feed this information at the time you complete a transaction, or it could be input later. Obviously, electronically at the time of the transaction is going to be the best. So if we do that, what do we eliminate? We eliminate manual updates to physical bin boards at the end of the day with a daily roll-up, where it's not as accurate as ticket-by-ticket data can be. And also just the near real-time impact on the binning system to see what your physical current inventory is at a location. So coming down we'll go down to the bottom right, and it's very key here that after the ticket's in the business system, which is the system of record, we want to be able to do a push of an email to all of the parties that need that, whether that's the counterparty, the shipper, the customer, whoever needs an email of this transaction. We want to push that out after it gets into the business system, because then it's in the system of record and it's an email coming from the system of record. So again, it's back to getting it in the business system as quickly as we can. Then that also facilitates the last item I want to cover in the bottom left, which is online customer account access. Because again, once it's in the business system, it'll be available for your customer in your portal for them to view. So again, the main point of this slide is as fast as we can get the information into the system, then we can report not only our position as a company, but our customers will know what their position is on the books and where they stand with their contract fulfillment or whatever. So moving on to the next slide, let's see what we can do about improving the ticketing process. So it's not only about what we do with the information after it's gathered, but what can we do to make this gathering of the information quicker at the scale? And really, there's two main areas that we want to key on here. As you can see, communication and identification. So if we solve communication and identification at a location, then everything runs better, everything's smoother, and everything is faster. There's just no other way around it. So for communication, one of the key things that you're probably all familiar with, you've seen are message boards. And what key areas that we solve issues with message boards is we let your customer see their transaction being processed in real time. And if something's not correct, they can speak up before it gets finalized, and which incurs an accounting correction. The other thing is moving the truck to the next point in the delivery process. So we want to move that truck to the next point in the delivery process. It can happen automatically on that message board, and we're eliminating radio calls or potentially reaching over and flipping a stoplight from red to green. Just another way of communicating seamlessly with your customer at the scale and eliminating some type of radio call or hand movement. For internal communication with our own staff, we need, it's best if we can find a nonverbal way to let the pit know about the quality of the grain that's going to be unloaded, that's headed for the pit. And we could do that with a pit view. There may be a monitor at the pit that you can look up and see what's coming. Other ways of accomplishing this with a pit ticket. So when the driver's at the scale and headed to the pit, they'll take a ticket down there with them and essentially get checked in at the pit. But either of those two methods, again, eliminates a radio call, especially even if you don't typically call down to the pit for every truck, you would at least not have to make the call down if there's something wrong with the load. It would just be right there for the pit operator to see. One more area that we don't have up here, just mention it briefly, but it's one of the key areas is outdoor ticket printers. And very obvious what that does, because the driver doesn't come into the office, he's at the outbound scale, he gets his ticket and can drive off. Or potentially there may be a reprint button where he can print an additional copy if he needs it, but he's not, either way, not bothering your staff to get that accomplished. Then we jump into identification. So typically, identification is something that we want to do. Let's just think about outbound loads in this scenario. And we want to identify who picked it up. And a lot of times today, that happens after a ticket's printed. So a ticket's printed, driver signs ticket, and then that ticket is put off to the side and maybe scanned into the document management system at some point. This being able to capture the signature in real time before the ticket's printed, or a driver's license scan in real time before the ticket is printed, will allow for the electronic copy of this ticket to contain that information automatically and save you from having to rescan in the information later, which is very common. We see that quite a bit. And the last piece of identification is radio frequency ID or RFID or proximity readers. And again, it's a larger and more disruptive step that you can do, but you can utilize these RFID cards to start a ticket, and you preload some identifying information about that customer. And so the ticket is started with that information, again, saving your staff from having to put it in. So with that, let's move on. And now we've got grain in the elevator. So how can we communicate this inventory to other systems, or I'm sorry, to other people within your organization that need to know this? And I'm sure there's various methods that everyone here is doing something today. This is just putting it out there in general of the different things that we've seen done. And obviously the easiest way is if there's a bidding system that's being fed when the ticket is printed, but there's other ways that we can do this. Take a picture, upload it. It's right here on this slide. The daily spreadsheet is something that we see quite frequently. With that spreadsheet, you never know who's updated and when, unless somebody's on a real strict timer. So, getting your accurate inventory can be a little difficult using that method. Plant control systems may be keeping track of this for you. And if they are, then that's great, but maybe there's something to do to get it exported out of that plant control system into something that you can use. We've seen that before where plant controls will have all this information, but it's just not being extracted. And one last area I want to talk about binning systems. It's not necessarily around the quality and quantity, but it's just around bin monitoring systems. And what we've seen in the field is a lot of times we'll see that the bin monitoring system has expansive capability as far as being able to message and let people know what's happening. But a lot of times those alerts are just configured to go to the operator screen in the plant. And given our current environment, getting those alerts tuned up and sent to others that are remote would be something to look at. So one last area around operations I'd like to discuss is dispatch and the possible areas where we can be more efficient with that. So if you have a sales or a purchase contract set up in your business system, then taking these contracts and assigning them unique load numbers can really streamline the processes. So think about using a centralized freight and dispatch system. If it's centralized and you have more than one dispatcher, then all dispatchers can see what's going on between themselves as well as their own work in one place. So you can look in, if you have 2 or 3 dispatchers, they know what's going on with the others. It eliminates a phone call to ask that other person what they're doing or what their plans are. These loads, for these contract fulfillments, these loads can be sent down to the origin scales from the dispatch system. And when the driver arrives, he simply relays that number to the operator or inputs that number himself, and it pre-populates a ticket with much of the load information. It's predominantly everything's there but the weights and the grades at that point. And again, you can see how that can eliminate errors of someone starting a ticket from scratch every single time and putting in this information. And the point here is we know this information. It's in the contract in the system. So pull it out as it sits and get it into a load number for delivery. And there's just very, very few areas to make an error in that type of a system. So what else can we do with a centralized dispatch? We can feed the actuals back into the business system automatically, potentially eliminating the need to manually update and apply loads to a contract. So again, if everything's in sync and you finish a dispatch order is received, we can update that contract from the centralized dispatch system, as well as we'll have the ticket for the delivery as well, or the sale, depending on which one it is. And then one other area outside of, again, kind of like in the binning system, outside of the actual software is just centralized dispatch, having the ability to utilize in-cab systems with onboard GPS. So a lot of companies have this, it's in place today, but maybe the GPS systems just aren't turned on or weren't turned on, or it wasn't a priority, or they were going to do it later. But again, given our current situation and not being able to walk over and ask somebody where they are with the load, or having to pick up the phone and call the driver to see where he's at, bug a dispatcher to see where a truck's at, or call the elevator to see if they delivered. Just utilizing these things that are already in the cab or maybe in the cab. If it's there, turn it on, and then on the map, there's all your trucks, and you can see that. So I know I went really fast there, but with that, in an effort to stay on time, I'm going to hand this back over to Mike, and he's going to discuss some grower-facing technologies.
All right, thank you, Steve. So today, there are tools available in the office and for remote stakeholders with grower-facing technologies. These grower-facing technologies help customers, growers, farmers, counterparties stay connected to their business activity. They also enable the customers to see their real-time information from anywhere, any device. It allows customers to launch activities like offers and make settlement requests, things like that. So it becomes more of not just a display system, but also an engagement platform with the grower. These systems streamline communication by allowing the growers to see their detailed reports at any time. Some systems allow reports to be generated by the counterparty, by the customer. And overall, it just creates a better customer experience because the customer can self-serve as much as possible and get to more strategic conversations when they do call in. So this is a very popular way of saving a lot of time in the office answering questions via the phone that are available by booting up an app or looking at a website to see the farmer's information directly. Another couple of ideas for those of you who may have more diversified operations is looking at other personas within your organization, like sales staff, sales managers, people who are meeting with customers, to allow them to basically have applications that they can travel with to do quick customer credit checks, to generate quotes for customers, to capture bookings, prepays, etc. And then also look at quantities on hand that are in different locations or positions of different inventory items to know what's available to sell. There are also capabilities to track order status and completion with various mobile applications. Relative to those in warehouses that have typically packaged goods, could be seed, crop protection products, fertilizer, etc., where there are barcodes on various items. There are applications that can help you assign barcodes to items in the business system using the mobile app, and then shipping those items, doing deliveries or shipments out of the warehouse with an application so that the person in the warehouse doesn't have to write it down on a piece of paper only to later have someone else key it into the business system. And same with transfers. These apps will let you transfer inventory quantities from one location to another. They also have certain other capabilities, perhaps like doing returns with a grower when their end of season needs have been met and they're returning things, or doing stock additions into the warehouse. So just some other things to keep in mind there. Steve and I put this slide together here just to kind of give you an overview of some of the things that we've discussed during our presentations. I believe this will be available after the webinar today. One of the things that we really didn't get into too much is right here with CRM and document management system tools. CRM tools, customer relationship management tools, are really useful if you have lots of people in different spots who are conversing with your customers sharing information, taking requests. Maybe customers are voicing complaints about certain things. Maybe you have certain goals for your origination or your sales team where they need to make contacts. You're setting goals or commission plans based on those or quotas. Those type of tools are really useful where you need to share information with multiple people and see what's going on with the customer. Otherwise, I think we've covered most of these at one level or another. And I believe Elise will be kind of voicing some of the questions that you may have done thus far and given us. Generally, there are also some tools available for collaboration within your business that are, available to anybody. Different companies use these for collaboration. The Office Suite by Microsoft or the Google Suite. There are task and project management tools that are pretty popular that can help you manage projects better. We've listed some logos there. Quick chats. We use Microsoft Teams here pretty extensively, and it's working well, but we've also used Slack, and I use WhatsApp with my family. It works pretty well. Virtual meetings, you're familiar with those because we're using Zoom right now. And then digital asset sharing with tools like Google Drive, OneDrive, Dropbox, and then collaborative tools for documentation for like Confluence or SharePoint, putting documents in those systems to help you share updated, could be safety policies, COVID procedures, protocols, those sorts of things. And lastly here, as you consider making changes in your business, there's an equation by Beckert Harris that looks at, if you're to overcome resistance to change, you need to make sure that there's a fair amount of dissatisfaction and pain, explain that, have a vision and a hope for the future, and then have some action items, some first steps you can take to overcome the resistance. We touched on this a little bit earlier too with assessing the friction in the business that maybe is prohibiting you from getting to some of your volume. And that would be looking for those low effort, high impact, or low effort, moderate impact changes you can make to streamline things to let you do more with less resources. So elements in change involve people, processes, and then the tools and technologies. Usually it's a combination of all of them. So with that, I believe, Elise, you have some questions for remaining time.
Yes, thank you, Mike and Steve. Very insightful information. There's a lot of very practical tools in there that people can put to use right away. So I did launch a poll. If people hover down to the bottom of their screen, they should see the poll was launched. So I'll give you another moment or two to answer that. And in the meantime, I did get a question from the audience. It is about sampling and probing at the platform scale. Is there a way to get that information onto a ticket?
Oh, okay. So the question is about sampling and probing before platform scale? Mm-hmm. As it, to become more efficient at the facility, change the layout? Yes. I mean, the trend that we see is that through facility expansion is that the probe is being moved off of the scale and it's being moved towards the entrance if space allows. And then that allows for a point of contact there at the probe where, depending on how you're set up, you may not need to interact with that driver again. If you aren't really leveraging any automation technology, it's still a good thing to do because your point of contact is happening at the probe. And by the time they get up to the scale, you can have most of the information on their ticket and still move them off the scale faster. So I hope that answers the question, but it is a trend and it's definitely everywhere we've seen it has been a benefit, and in conjunction with automation, it absolutely can be the only point of contact that you have with someone when they're at your facility.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Steve. Another question I have, so in these times where maybe staff is limited or where there are restrictions on letting people come into your facility, Do you have any suggestions on training tools, virtual training tools?
Well, with virtual training tools, we do use LinkedIn Learning for some of our more horizontal elements of education within our business. Tools like Zoom, and there's another tool out there, Anywhere. There's some educational tools we've used to help do training. Typically, the best thing that we found is that we tend to train the trainer. So the person who's going to be the expert within the organization, we spend a lot of time with that person or team training them, and then they in turn train others within their organization. But there are quite a few tools like this, or GoToMeeting. There are some educational tools that as well to help with that.
Okay, great. That is all the questions that we have. I have shared the results of our last survey, which was based on the survey, what do you all plan to do? And it looks like many of you plan on investigating one or more of these ideas, or at least suggesting implementing one or more of these ideas. So that's great feedback. I'm glad you all found this useful. And Steve, Mike, thank you so much for your time. With that, I will wrap things up. And you at home, you will be able to view this webinar on our website at live.feedandgrain.com in the next few days. And don't forget to sign up for our next webinar on June 10th about confined space entry. So thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Elise.
Thank you.